How to create your best art without being talented, without preparation, without hard work, without 12-hour days. This is something that nobody is talking about, especially in the 21st century when everyone is talking about working hard, doing everything perfect, making sure that you grind it out, that you follow the necessary blueprints. But when we look at the best artists of history, we don't see that process. They are not following a blueprint. They are not following a system that is a system that is being followed by everybody else. They are doing something completely different and oftentimes effortlessly. For example, when Nietzsche writes, also sprach Zarathustra, he writes it in 10 days. There is no grind. He writes a massive magnum opus in 10 days, just out of the flood of his creativity. And when we look at these superstars, I recently was reading, for example, a autobiography of Tesla written by Tesla. You don't see him talking about mathematical equations. You don't see him talking about grinding away. You don't see him talking about making sure that he is calculating everything like a scientist. In fact, we see him talking about a form of spirituality. We see him talking about putting himself in the mindset, in a space, in a creative flow state where he can just receive downloads, where he can just receive the solutions to the problems that he is facing from a scientific perspective. And so this is what we see all over the place. We see these superstar creatives not worrying about work. When Bukowski, for example, one of the great authors, when he makes a to-do list, on one of his to-do lists, we know this because we have his diaries and all of that stuff. On one of the to-do lists, he says, today, I'm going to walk in the sun. That's it. That's his workday. Walking in the sun because he believes that by a simple mindset shift, he can generate genius on the spot that will be way more powerful than a 10-hour workday. And we know that. We know that these people, their drunk scribbles that they would make in a bar somewhere, are oftentimes more powerful than the entire oeuvre of a classic academic normie working at university, writing out their PhDs for 30 fucking years. We know that. We know that they can sometimes say something in a sentence that is more powerful than the entire oeuvre of these average academics that we are seeing. And to be fair, I've been suffering from this. I have been putting myself in a cage in the last probably year or two where I'm talking about selling art, where I'm talking about the business side of art, where I'm forcing myself to make videos that are only targeting that specific problem. And not only does it feel draining, not only does it deprive me of all of the creativity that I have inside of me, I have in the past developed a way to paint with lightning from the sky as the only human being to do that with patents on my name without knowing anything about science. I didn't have a science degree. I just made shit up on the spot. And in those trance states that I put myself in back in those days, I would literally patent things. I would invent new things that are proven to be beneficial because that's one of the requirements for an invention and for a patent, that are proven to be completely unique and not represented in the world. But I was doing this without talent. I didn't have talent. I didn't have scientific backgrounds. And so you don't actually need scientific backgrounds to do that. You don't need a science degree to patent things and invent things. You don't need an art degree to make a masterpiece. But you do have to put yourself in some kind of creative flow state where the creative juices can flow freely so that we can, in a 10-day period, write a best-selling book. And if I look at some of my best videos, and I look at some of my worst videos on YouTube, some of the worst videos are the most edited, most worked on, most aggressively crafted and polished videos that I could possibly make. Days of work, sometimes weeks of work, and then it gets 500 views. Then it gets 500 views, which is laughable. And then some other videos where I just turn on the camera, I speak from the heart, it gets 100,000 views. And so, what is that? What is going on there? What's the difference between those two states of being? One, all about work ethic and restricting oneself, not drinking alcohol, getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning, going to bed at 10, never going out, definitely not amusing, just all of those types of restrictions. And in the other state, it's just free flow of creativity. How can we put ourselves in that free flow state of creativity? That is the real question. And so the first question we have to ask ourselves is, what is holding us back from this creative flow state where genius happens? Because you've been working, forcing yourself into some kind of system for the last 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. And what happens? Now you're retired or you're in the process of starting that new career. You don't want to waste any time anymore. And what do you do when you don't want to waste any time anymore? You do the exact same thing that you've been doing for the last 40 years, which didn't work, which was working hard, your head down, and then grinding it out. And what does that mean, grinding it out? It means for most people that there's a particular type of perfectionism that needs to be achieved. First, they need to reach a certain level with their art before they can create something amazing, something revolutionary. First, they need to learn everything there is to learn in the game. Watch 3 hours of YouTube content a day to become someone that can create something amazing. And this type of perfectionism pushes us towards a forced system. But Nietzsche isn't forced when he's writing Also sprach Zarathustra in 10 days. And I bet that manuscript that he wrote there wasn't perfect. I bet it was full of language mistakes and grammar mistakes. I bet he just poured his heart out for 10 days and then wrote this masterpiece. How does Picasso make 47,000 pieces of art? With perfectionism? Of course not. A lot of the artworks that Picasso makes, even if you actually go and look at his art, most of the art sucks balls. It's extremely bad. It is just a creative force that needs to come out. And Picasso understands somehow that he has about 25 masterpieces in his veins, 30 masterpieces in his veins. And in order to get them out, he first needs to make 40,000 bad works of art. He's just a creative force that lets it all out. If you look at the artist Prince, what is Prince doing? He is making a song, writing a song every single day, then recording that song every single day, then recording all of the instrumental parts himself every single day, and then oftentimes editing the whole song that same day. And what does he have in his vault? He has thousands and thousands of pieces of music in his vault. Why? To get 10, 20, 30 pieces, masterpieces out. A creative flow that is absolutely not perfect when he is making one song a day. Most of those songs probably are just not that good. We are not allowing ourselves to make for the sake of making itself. And when we look at the great superstars, they are making for the sake of making itself. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking. They are thinking that they simply don't have time. They are working a full-time job. They have 2 children that they have to sustain, a wife that they have to sustain. There's just no time. Or they've wasted all of their time throughout their life, 50, 60 years of working for a corporate slave job where they were just deprived of all creativity possible and they were just doing a mindless job on repetition for decades, draining everything in their soul. And now they feel like they don't have time anymore. They only have 10 years left or 20 years left. Or they only have 20 minutes a day that they could possibly put into art. Well, for those people, I think the number one lesson here, the number one lesson that all of these superstar creatives have in common, that my worst videos vs my best videos have in common, that all of my personal success has in common, is the belief, two things actually. Number one, the belief that in a very limited amount of time, you can create a masterpiece. Nietzsche believed that 10 days was enough. Nietzsche believed that 10 days was enough to change history. That belief needs to come first. You need to actually believe that even though you don't know anything about science, even though you don't have science degrees, you can in fact figure out a way to paint with lightning from the sky. You have to believe that first. And look at the examples to justify that reality for yourself. And then number two, you have to, this is my number one strength. This has been my number one strength from day one. You have to be able, this is the number one strength of Nietzsche as well. The number one strength of all of the people mentioned in this video. You have to be able to look like an absolute fool. If you look at my first videos, they are cringe. I cannot communicate. I suck balls, if anything. And I was aware of that at that time, and that didn't stop me in any way, shape, or form. I just created those videos anyway. They are still on this channel. You can watch them if you want. If I look at the first creations that I was making in the lightning painting stuff, I was using an electrostatic discharge simulator to simulate 50,000 volts of static electricity and then have these salt solutions because I believed, I assumed, this was stupid, I assumed that these salt solutions would guide the electricity in some kind of way. It didn't work. It didn't work. But I believed and allowed myself to be stupid. I allowed myself to be cringe. When Picasso is making 47,000 pieces of art and the far majority, look it up yourself, sucks balls. He is allowing himself to suck balls because he knows that if he just lets creativity out for 20, 30 years, he will rise on top all the way in the end. Now, in order to make this video complete, we have to talk about how to find your artistic voice, how to find your art style, so to speak, because one of the things that Nietzsche has is an artistic voice, a unique voice. Picasso, the same thing, a unique voice. And so we have to talk about how to find that art style, but we're not going to do that predominantly because I already did in a video called How to Find Your Art Style So Fast It Feels Illegal. And while you're at it, go to my newsletter, subscribe to the newsletter. That said, get the hell out of here.